When we test a mobile application, it's not enough just to test on a single emulator or on a single physical device. There's too many differences that's caused by the choice of devices to allow us to take that risk. So we need to be able to test on multiple devices. The choice of which device to use depends on the platform that we're working with. So for the iOS operating system, which is used on iPads and iPhones, we need to test on the different scales of the screen size. We need to test the different versions of the platform. So the iPhone 4 and the iPhone 5 have different form factors. They have different screen resolutions. We want to test that. We want to focus our testing on the impact of key differences with the devices. So this could be things like the locales. If we're testing in Gujarati, we're going to get a different user interface than if we test in German. And we want to test these differences on the different devices. For Android devices, there are literally thousands of them, and the form factors vary much more than the iPhones. So we'd want to test on a range of different screen sizes, ranging from the small screen sizes to the extra high density screen sizes. For Android, it's key to test on what are known as the reference devices. These are the devices that Google has put their stamp on. The most recent one is the Nexus 4, the Nexus 7 devices. Before that, it was things like the Nexus S, and going right back to the original G1 phone. These are the ones that we need to make sure our software always works on, because it's closest to the ideal of the original intention of Android. Then we also want to test on popular devices, and Samsung is the world's largest manufacturer now, particularly of Android devices. So we probably want to test on some Samsung devices too. I'm going to move on to my experience report, which was based on testing a global application that's used in probably 50+ countries around the world, and it delivers hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue. For the mobile platforms, they have a series of different applications for the iOS platform, for the Android, for mobile web, and for HTML5. They also support BlackBerry devices, and that's still particularly popular in countries such as Nigeria, which is one of the world's largest markets for the BlackBerry devices. And we need to make sure that we cover those, as well as the more modern smartphones. In our case, we had an engineering team in another country, in fact in another continent, who developed the server applications, and the mobile applications were developed in England. And we needed to make sure that when we tested the integration with the back-end services as well as the applications that we were developing. So we needed to test the APIs provided by the servers as well as the client software we were working with. Most of the testing was done by human beings, and typically by a small team for each individual platform. So there's a separate testing team for iOS, a separate testing team for Android, and similarly a separate testing team for web and HTML5. Those two are sufficiently similar that the same team tested both outputs, both forms of the application. We also looked at using test automation technologies. The test automation was being developed slightly after the main code base was being developed for the applications, and it meant that the test automation tended to be for the functionality and at the application level.